Welcome to Karkur Gold, the home of Bleach Revisited. I am the eponymous Karkur Gold, your host, and I am bringing you something a little unusual, a little different. So, what are you looking at here? This is Bleach Brave Souls. Who are these characters? What are these designs? You may be wondering if you're not familiar. Well, Bleach Brave Souls has a number of unique character designs that are typically supervised by Kubo Tite, which is to say, basically, we don't know the whole process, but more or less he looks over the designs, he gives them a final kind of okay. He probably gives guidance notes, but he doesn't actually sit down and draw the whole design start to finish. Other people do that. And so, with previous designs, there's been like various kind of sketches that all fit a motif, and eventually one was picked, and I assume okayed by Kubo Tite. And that is the case for these designs, which just came out with the 7th anniversary of the game. So, I want to discuss these designs. I want to talk a little bit about them, about where they're coming from. If you're not aware, I do play Bleach Brave Souls. I've been playing it since the 5th anniversary. If you're curious about the game, feel free to ask me anything in the comments, but I'll be just talking about the designs of these characters today. Anyway, so with the 7th anniversary, we do have these designs for Ichigo, Kurosaki, and Ishida Uryu. Notably, I really do want to emphasize that a lot of the discussion of these designs is going to be in spoiler territory. So as we start to talk about the rest of this, there will be spoilers for later arcs of the manga, especially, as elements of those parts are worked into these designs. So if you kind of don't know what you're looking at, if you don't want spoilers for the series, especially, including the entirety of the manga, then this is your cue to head on out. But if you don't mind that, if you're not a person who plays Bleach Brave Souls, you're not aware of these designs, let's get into them. So first I'll be talking about this Ichigo. Let me go right into his image. So you do have this kind of character art as well as a little blurb, this background. It says Ichigo's form after being affected by Uryu's Quincy powers. On top of getting his Soul Reaper powers back, Ichigo battles with a bow and arrow transformed by the powers of the Quincy. This Ichigo was designed for 7th anniversary of Bleach Brave Souls. And we can expand just the full artwork there so that you can enjoy it in all of its glory. I want to talk about a couple things here. So, the background mentions that this is after Ichigo gets back his powers, and as you can see, it does incorporate elements of his full bring, notably the Shihakusho having a lot of prominent white, especially the cross shape across his chest, like the X, basically, that he gets worked into his design, as well as elements from that general kind of later bits of his design. I really like the huge sash that he's got there. I really like the full bring design. I felt like maybe it was a little bit too tight, a little too Power Rangers-esque, a little Sentai. But, I did like it, so I like that the elements of it are present here. Obviously, there's completely unique elements. I do like the kind of jacket, like popped collar look that he's got. He's also got this red that runs through his design, and I did mention before in a couple of videos that I've always noticed that Ichigo does have this red accent to his design, so it's kind of interesting here that he does have it on the inside of his collar as well as down. But you would have noticed that on his regular designs in the series, such as in the part of Zangetsu that is like the strap that goes across his chest, or in his hollow mask does have the red lines on it, I believe, the kind of design. So it's always kind of been tied a little bit to his hollow side, I feel. Nevertheless, here we can see that he actually forms this arrow out of what appears to be the chain and of course the blade of Zangetsu, notably his full bring Zangetsu. It's got like those little divots at the end of the sword. That's pretty cool. And then otherwise he has the whole black kind of blade segment of it over here. Of course, readily being his Quincy weapon, right? But it's interesting that it features the Bankai symbol, the Ban sort of swastika, as you will. It's not actually a swastika, but same, as people might recognize it. But that's actually his bow. So kind of neat design. Certainly a take on like what if Quincy Ichigo, but like really leaned into the Quincy parts. I will be showing off his animations in a second here. But let's go over Uryu's look as well. By the way, he does shoot these arrows. You can shoot them out of this little kind of screen here. That's his normal attack string. But let's also talk about Uryu's design. Because as much as I like Ichigo's, I am a fan of Uryu's as well. I think it's the design that I liked more out of the two. So this is Uryu's form after being affected by Ichigo's power. He fights with his own heightened Quincy powers while shouldering his pride, ideals, and everything else he holds dear. This Uryu was designed for the 7th anniversary of Bleach Brave Souls. And so you see here that he has, this massive sword, which is of course a take on the Schill Schneider. We also have him featuring a little bit of light armoring, mostly as excuse for this large kind of winged platform that follows him around. It reminds me a lot of kind of the Hussar, if you're familiar with the historical Hussar. They were the winged knights. Go look up pictures of those folks if you haven't. But otherwise, we do get this kind of the scarf and the raiments that he has. See the scarf, the kind of vestments. They give a very holy look to him. It reminds me a lot of him being kind of joining the Quincy. Essentially, it's very evocative of his Thousand Year Blood War kind of regalia, although he doesn't ever end up nearly as like holy looking as this. His leans kind of in this holy knight look. I do like that the Quincy cross is represented in the Reiatsu guard of his sword, if you would call it that. As we well know, it's an arrow, but it's going to function like a sword. He's also got this strange little ear cuff that has, some Reiatsu flowing off of it too. And it makes me wonder how much of this, if like that's perhaps a device that interfaces with the rest of this floating around him. That's the way that I've chosen to interpret it. That it essentially is like a connecting mechanism that allows him to control the reishi of this larger device. And we'll see exactly how that works once we get in game with him. But I do like the idea that these are both forms that kind of form from being influenced by the other one's power. As we know, these two are resonant with one another, right? They have grown throughout the series with one another. They have, their powers bolster into one another. And so it's easy to think of like, oh, well, Uryu being affected and maybe Ichigo's kind of overflowing Reiatsu or the Hogekyo even, things like that feel a little bit more tied to Ichigo. But then I think about like ways in which Ichigo might have been affected by Uryu, and outside of really adopting Quincy techniques, I'm not quite so sure. I wonder if the idea of whenever they gave Ichigo back his power, some of Uryu's energy maybe going into that, right? How they stab him with that sword that's made up of all of their Reiatsu, right? That's in the Lost Agent arc. Could be. But nevertheless, pretty cool designs. I'm going to show you their animations in game, because that is one thing that I think is pretty cool. So we'll just be going to one of these missions that doesn't have a lot going on in it. There's this boss rush mission. I go ahead and do that. But yeah, definitely both seem like primed kind of designs for the 1,000 Year Blood War. And it makes sense because with the 7th anniversary, they're trying to kind of hype the fact that they're going to be releasing 1,000 Year Blood War exclusive sort of units, and they want to show that off, right? So they want to have these forums be sort of forward reflective of design sensibilities and elements of the manga. Alright, so now that we're in a mission, I gotta make sure that I turn off auto here. There's old Izuru. We will shoot at him. So, as you can see, Ichigo shoots these arrows. They can weaken and paralyze enemies. That's more reflective of just what he can do in the game. I have Ozushi follow me around because he's cute. But, so, normal attack string. He fires these arrows. They have the chain from his sword. The last fires a volley of, maybe, is it 2 of them mixed together? No, it's just one with several chains, I think. Your first strong attack here is that he jumps and he shoots out a big cross into the ground. So it's blah. You can actually do that in a different angle too if you wanted it to be that sort of cross. I like that it has the red of his kind of hollow Getsugas or the Gran Race Arrow sort of thing. I think that's cool. His second attack is he actually throws out what appears to be his full bring, and it spirals around and chases enemies down. So it seems like that's sort of a use of the full bring, and you can see him kind of rev it up before throwing it out. I really do like this animation a lot. That it is that use of what we got kind of criminally little of. And then his third, he just does this kind of sparkle shot of arrows. It's not too much in the way of animation. I do have to wait a little bit for it to recharge here. But, there it is. And finally, of course, we have his super technique. He says, I don't care what kind of power it is. I'll use it to protect those around me. Use it all to protect those around me. As he fires this arrow into the sky, pulls it down, and pulls down all this energy. Kind of neat. I like this idea of, again, Ichigo doesn't care what kind of power it is. He's going to use it to protect the people around him. So whenever we talk about, Ichigo as a character, he's often taking a hold of the power of these that would oppress him and his allies, right? And so it makes sense that here, if he's grasping into Quincy power and he's using that to, take down those who would hurt the people around him, even though Ichigo himself is revealed to be a Quincy, we do find that he, rebels against the Quincy ruling class, right? The Yuha Bach and all of his cronies, right? Their names aren't even coming to me now. Oh boy. I just keep thinking of like the Shuswaffle, but they're not. It's all the rest of them, right? The rest of the Quincy, the Stern Ritter. There we go. Ooh. Though you don't necessarily need to be a Stern Ritter to follow Yuha Bach, right? Not everyone who does is. So, I like that his dialogue there speaks a little bit towards that, and especially his forward-facing towards the 1,000-Year Blood War. Like, this is an Ichigo that perhaps utilized more of his Quincy powers going into that final arc, and I believe that this is meant to be representative of that. So one last time, I will bust off his Nad string, use his special attack 1, 2, and 3, and that is it for Ichigo. Now I will reset this mission so I can get the bomb on Uryu, his super move, right? The soul bomb, as it is called. So we're going to go back and start the mission again and beat up poor Kira once over. Let me edit this and put him in the front. Yeah, I do like Bleach Brave Souls as far as just thinking about these characters and interacting with them in a lot of ways. So I might make a number of videos. But yeah, let me make sure to go take care of Izuru. And, skipped his bomb. Don't care. Get out of here, Izuru. So now you can kind of see, now that we're not in the art, you can see a little bit more of what this wing kind of situation looks like. Where there are this sort of floating thing that almost cradles around Uryu in this way. He is a melee character, so he has a 4-hit attack, bop, 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 where he attacks with his sword. Get that at the different angles. Kira, I'm sorry. His first special attack is this shot where he just shoots the arrow at the enemy. So, pop. His second special, he does this lunge forward. Kind of does a big spin. It takes him pretty far forward. Notably, all of his attacks can drain health from the enemy as well as weaken them. And I think the draining health thing, it kind of reminds me of the balance, right? His shrift. And so I like to consider that that's maybe the sensibility there, right? That weakening others while healing himself is reflective of use of the balance. Though we did get a pretty good reflection of that already before. Or not the balance, what am I saying? The antithesis. Whew. You're about to make me lose my mind up in here. But for a second, everybody was like crying, oh, that's Jugram. No, it's antithesis. He fights against Jugram, who has the balance. But the antithesis, right, that he inflicts everything back upon, that he reverses that sort of situation, right? And so it's interesting to consider, that might be reflective of the antithesis. Notably, in the earlier release that we had of Uryu for Thousand Year Blood War, he did have an ability where if any status effects were rendered upon him, they would instead get rendered upon the enemy that was hitting them with him, and it would heal Uryu. And so this looks like another kind of take on that. Anyway, so we have the lunge. His third strong attack, by the way, is he just does this kind of large, I don't even know how to describe that. We'll see his lunge from a different direction. Seems like his wings kind of help around with those. But yeah, it looks like he just does a big slice. Big slice. It was kind of hard to tell from, straight on whenever I did it. Finally, we do have his Soul Bomb, his super move. This is I told you, didn't I? A Quincy only uses bow and arrows. And of course, he fires this huge version of his sword, which is of course truly an arrow. And we find that the wings were actually the firing mechanism for the bow. They were the bow itself, right? So they double as these sort of reishi wings that he can use, but also they are this bow mechanism. And we can even see that kind of whenever he does fire this arrow, that they line out in front of him. So I like to imagine that it is some sort of mechanism. We can also see on his back that he has the Quincy Cross design, which is pretty cool. But yeah, just kind of drudged up in the Quincy regalia. Next, I will be pulling up the concept art that we have for both of them, and I'll be discussing that in brief, but it's a lot of the points that I already made here. So please stick around for that. So welcome back. We're here looking at the concept art posted for Ichigo, and we'll be looking at Uryu as well. I think that we get a little bit more distinctive elements of all of this. I think one kind of really neat thing is, of course, we get the fingers missing. We get the close-up on this glove. It's immediately evocative of course, the Sanrei glove that we know Ishida to wear, which is kind of interesting. Obviously, it's not a Sanrei glove because it's not. He doesn't use anything that would be related that way. But we can get that closer kind of design for his Ichigo, and we get to see a little bit more of how he looks, not in the kind of chibi-fied version that the game uses for its model work, right? I do like the look that we get. I really like, overall, I think this is such a great synthesis of his Shinigami and Fullbringer looks. I think this is really kind of, I never really liked the Fullbringer Shinigami look that he ended up with as much. Like, I loved Genjo's. I loved how white forward Genjo's was, how, like, kind of just metal and cool it was. And I was really hoping Ichigo would get a look that cool. And this feels like it's a little bit more like that it's got this kind of, this white almost as a shell, or as like this bony sort of exterior. It really reminds me of the way that he used the white of his True Bankai, right? And that he sheathed his Bankai inside of the white other sword. And I like that here as this sort of externalization there. Yeah, and just the layering is really nice. Immediately, of course, thinking of other kind of Quincy elements that are worked in, we do. I mean, the pop collar isn't necessarily Quincy. We know that they're more like mantles and things like that. But the neckline, especially, and that kind of line all the way down the middle of the shirt, is undeniably some sort of Quincy sort of like holy vestment looking thing. So there's elements that certainly scream Quincy here that are more evocative of it. The theme behind this 7th anniversary was resounding pride. And because of the trailer that they showed, it had me very convinced it would be Rukia and Ichigo. As much as I know pride is a keyword that is really tied to Uryu, I was just hoping for a Rukia the trailer had a very soft musical theme, coupled with, of course, rainfall. And as we know, rainfall is often associated with Ichigo and his trauma and the women related to that. And I basically, my speculation was that it would have been Rukia, but the pride stuff definitely pointed a little bit more toward Uryu. And I like the designs we got, so it all works out. All in all, I don't really like. I'm not a huge fan of the way the bow is. Like it just feels unyieldy large. It's very much a video game bow, much less like something that I think would work in a manga or anime. It's cool. Don't get me wrong. I do like elements of his design are cool, but it's certainly like the kind of weapon you would expect somebody to pull out for like a one-time special use sort of thing, rather than their everyday weapon. So I really like. I feel like the strength of Zangetsu is in its simplicity of design, and this gets a little bit too over designed for me. But a lot of the K-Lab designs tend to kind of have that issue where there's this kind of straddling the edge between what's clean and what works and what isn't. Like for instance, I feel like Ichigo's design is just a little too complex too. Like it's very clean, it's very nice, but then you do have a lot of these little elements like the Sanrei glove or the archer's glove, basically, being one hand to add this asymmetry there. You get, I really wish that the cloak in the back was just like all one piece, or just torn in, like in the middle. It doesn't need the three tears that it has. I feel like that's a little too much. There's things like that kind of throw me off personally about the design, but otherwise, I really do like it. I think it has a lot of elements that I appreciate, and I like that we can even more clearly see that the arrow of the bow, just like how Uryu's arrows are definitely just swords, but they call them arrows. Ichigo's arrow is absolutely just his sword, right? So it's kind of neat to see that. The see Zangetsu represented also as this blade and this bow, right? Let's talk about Uryu's, though. I probably have less to say here that wasn't already covered. I do think that the weird, like, arm cuffs are a little bit strange. The only way that I can read them in a way that makes it, like, set okay with my mind is that they're still a part of the, like, wing bow device that he has. This big floating sort of butt wings. But we don't really get very much in the way of description of that. We do have a closer look at his earpiece, which is just on one ear there. We also get a nice visual of the sword. Otherwise, we can see where we've got the kind of cross on his back and everything else. But yeah, there's like a lot of like elements. Like I don't know why his like left arm glove needs to be like flared at the top that way. Like it feels like it's just asymmetrical for the sake of being asymmetrical. Whenever his design already has like a good bit going on. Again, it's just just shy of being like very clean and exactly what it should be. It's just got a few little pieces of flair that I feel take it over and feel a little maybe over designed or a little bit too accessorized. Which Uryu, I don't ever really think of Uryu as the character to have a lot of like little like, I say trinkets in this. Obviously, he has things like his Quincy Cross and all of that, but I don't think of him as being like a hugely asymmetrical design. I guess his hair is, but otherwise, the whole ear thing and the thing with the like huge kind of flared into the glove throws me off. I do like the use of the metal throughout. I do like the shoulder pauldrons, the Sephiroth pauldrons, I guess, if you're gonna call them anything. As well as the kind of ultimately this huge kind of winged device. I've come around on it. At first, I was very thrown off by it, but seeing it in game and seeing how he uses it for his super ability, it all kind of makes sense that it is essentially a super bow, and I like that. Um, I also like that you can get maybe a little bit of a sense of it being some sort of crazy Quincy tech, as it almost seems like it has the lining that is reminiscent of Blutvene inside of it. Um, so that's a neat kind of detail that can probably be easily missed in game. Otherwise, all in all, I think it's a cool Uryu. It makes him really feel like he's like this next level kind of design that I don't think we really ever got. We tended to get very understated Uryu designs throughout the entirety of the manga, and so I do like this kind of overblown sort of super Uryu, because we do get, we get super versions of Ichigo left, right, and center, right? Ichigo's always got, it's like almost every arc Ichigo gets some sort of cool new power up, some sort of very visual, striking way of existing, and that hasn't always been the case for Uryu. I mean, he got different bows, certainly, but that tended to be about the extent of it. And I mean, I loved his drip in the final arc, but it wasn't like this different, right? So this is neat to see. And as far as like the way that Ichigo might have influenced this, because we can certainly see the Quincy influences on Ichigo, but seeing Ichigo's influences on Uryu, it seems a little bit less clear. Maybe just in wielding such a large weapon, perhaps. I don't know. It's curious, the way that it goes that way. And I wonder if it's just like the ways in which he's fighting are maybe more reminiscent of the ways that Ichigo fights. That he's more kind of brawling and up front and all of that. And then he has this device that he can lean back on for a huge blast of power, similar to maybe Ichigo's Getsuga or using his Hollow Mask, perhaps. Whereas Ichigo is fighting a little bit more like Uryu by using the ranged sort of attacks and approach, and having like this multifaceted approach with both his full bring as well as his shots. I don't know, but let me know what you think about these designs. I'm curious, and if you'd like to see more like this, because there are other game unique designs that were supervised by Kubo Tite, and I'm curious if people would like to kind of talk about those and have a space to really look at those that is divorced from all of the rest of the usual Bleach Brave Souls content that most people get into it for. So go ahead and let me know about that as well. But that is all for now. This has been Karakura Gold, reminding you the spirits are forever with you. Stay gold.